Hello, good evening, guys. Welcome everybody on stream and on site here. Today, there's a great pleasure that we have an international guest, but also the first time that we do this kind of stuff in English. So forgive me if anything goes wrong in that field. It's a great honor to have you here, as always. There's a great atmosphere, I can feel it, actually. Today we have a different form of a meetup because it's a workshop. And we have two great speakers and great guys that will talk about Angular and show you actually some code in practice, not only on the presentation, but actually how they do some of the stuff. So the first guest would be Przemek Łęczycki, who is like working with us at House of Angular for a while, I would say, really long time. He's like family, 9 years or something like that. But he started as a backend developer, and at some point he decided to switch on the front-end part because of his web development experience and so on. But so at some point he have a lot of thoughts about how to approach architecture, how to approach the application from the backend person point of view. But in general, already a lot of experience in Angular as well. And the second guest, it's Neil Kaufman, and he came from us, especially from Israel, to have that workshop with you guys. And he's a Google developer expert as well. It's first time that we host him here, but hopefully not the last one. He already asked to have a group photo in the red hoodies, but he still don't know that we have one for him as well. So yeah. So he will talk about practical parts of Angular. I mean, showing you some of the workshop, but you need to wait for see what will be in the workshop itself. Few other organization stuff for guys that are here on site. There is a Wi-Fi password on your desks and SSID and a password. So try to use it if you would like to participate in the workshop with your laptop. And another thing is that, I ask you to put our meetup and then House of Angular and NG Poland and Angular Warsaw, but yeah, Angular Love, especially on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever you can call it. Just put our links and our hashtags just to more people could see the workshop and could get that great knowledge that we are trying to share today. I also wanted invite you to join NG Poland this year. It's it's really soon, next week on Tuesday. We're starting with a great conference this year, and so thank you, Dariusz Kalbalczyk, for being with us here today, helping us to host and stream that event for you guys. So I'm really looking forward to start. So at first, Przemek will start showing you the workshop from his angle. So I invite him to sit next to the computer. So thank you guys and have a great evening.
All of you, and be aware that there is even more people online. So my name is Przemek. Let's switch to my slides. And today I will be talking about the backend knowledge that you can use on the front-end applications as well. And on my presentation, I will be showing you some real code examples with followed by tests, unit tests. So you can see the QR code as well as the URL to the repository if you want, you can browse and follow me during my presentation. And we'll be showing you the whole refactoring process of the object-oriented code, and I will show you how you can use this knowledge to work with the data structures, because in the Angular, we mostly work with the data structures. There is a little bit of object-oriented code, but mostly we work with the data, not the behavior. Okay, and the rules I will be explaining and introducing to you is a rule information expert, dependency inversion, and interface segregation. And at the end of the presentation, I will be showing you what architectural drivers lead me to those solutions. So yeah, let's start from the example, because we'll learn how to do it in practice. So on this screen, we see the simple behavior of the application. On the left, we can see the customer that has some money. He has like $10, and he wants to buy simple product, which is Apple in this case, and the Apple costs $10. So in our application that we will be building, we will be just paying for the Apple, so the money is gone already, and you see the customer has the one Apple. So the first rule that I would like to show you in the practice is this information expert rule. And the rule says basically that responsibility of the class should be responsibility to the class that has the information necessary to fulfill the responsibility. Assign responsibility to the class that has the information necessary to fulfill the responsibility. So basically, that means that you have to move your app behavior to the classes that has the data needed to operate to achieve some kind of goal. So in the first exercise, I will be showing you the two simple classes that represents the example that I shown you before. And the first class is customer. This customer can have some products. It has the name, the money, and the product itself that has SKU, which is like the product identifier. We have the name of the product and the price of the product. And in not very good code, we can see that all of our logic is moved to the application. So this method, this function by product contains a lot of logic that probably should be moved to the object itself. So we see that we need to know about the customer money, we need to know about customer products, we need to know about customer money again, just to subtract it from this object. And what we can do about it, very simple thing, we can move all this customer logic code to the customer object. So we can create the buy product in the customer. And now we see that we don't need expose anymore the money and the products. But still we see one problem, that the So this is the provided solution. So on this example, we see that the buy product method that was looked before like this, when you see the red cross, is changed to very simple, nice function, which use only one method on the customer. But there is one more problem here, because as you see, we use the price from the product. So this is not encapsulated yet. We expose the price from the product. and I will show you how we can deal with it. So the solution for that may be that you can create another method, sell to customer, and then when you pass the customer object to this method, you can see that you can run the customer by product and then pass this private property as an input parameter to the method by product of the customer. And by this way, you see that we really encapsulated that property, and our customer method is not aware about the product private property anymore, but it's still aware about the price. So we can use it. So our code, our application will look a little bit different. Now, instead of firing the byproduct on a customer, we switch to firing the sell to customer on the product. And by this time, as we are not exposing any properties from the product, we can make all those properties private. I will not do it now because I want to show you more examples. So let's make a little bit more complex example. So let's add shop to our application. So currently the customer will be able to buy the products in the shop. So the shop can sell the items to the customer. And the behavior behind this will be that the customer pay the money, so we subtract the money, we got an apple, and the shop has plus $10, but it has one less apple. Let's introduce the shop object here. And now we can create a method, which is called sell to customer. And in this method, we use SKU as an input and customer. And on the first line, you see that we are searching the first line of this method, of course. We see that we are searching the right product with this SKU in the stock of the shop. So again, we see there is one more problem again. We see that we need again the private property of the product, and we want to encapsulate that. I will show you how to do it. So let me explain the rest of the logic. So when we have this product in the shop, we can buy it, but if we don't have it, we just throw an error that the product is not available. So how can we deal with this property that should be private? Because this example is a little bit different, because currently we see that we are working on an array of the products. It's not a single product. So how can we hide the private property in collections? So I would suggest to do the static method. It's a little nice trick that I use. And we can introduce a method like find by SKU in the product class, which is static. And we see that we can pass the SKU as an input parameter, the list of the products, and we return product or null if the product is not, has not been found. And in this example, you see that even if we are not the owner of this product instance, we still are able to access our private properties like SKU. And by this way, this way allows you to encapsulate very nice methods inside your object. So every time you use your product, you know that you have like handy methods inside your product class, and you can use it. So it reduces a lot code duplication and simplify the development because as you see in this example, the code is much more readable. So instead of running the find method on the stock, we can use just the static method of the product, and it's really nice. And on the bottom you see removing bug skew looks pretty similar, and it's really nice. But as I said at the beginning, in Angular we mostly use the data structures, not the objects, and I will explain you what is the difference between two of them. And on the left you see the object, because instead of having the information about the data shape, the data structure, you have the behavior of the object. And on the right, we see the data structure. And there is, in TypeScript, there is no definition of the data structure. So you can express data structure by using the interfaces or classes. So even if you create the class with public properties, it will not be an object, because it does the reason of having that class is not keeping the behavior inside, but only the data. So you can use them like equally and tell that these are the data structures. And how we can encapsulate those nice methods that I showed you before that were static in the class, but using the interface. And I would say that it's a good approach when you keep all your classes related to that object very close together. So for example, if we see this product interface, which is just a data structure, you can create very close, even in this file, or if you want to move it to the next file, please make sure that those methods or the functions will be very close together to this object. So every time you want to use the product interface, you'll be in reach of those functions. So you can see that those functions doesn't have any other dependencies. They are dependent only on the product interface, which is really easy to recognize where to put those functions. So I've seen in many projects that there are a lot of duplication when we want to, for example, convert some array of some type to the record. You can easily create those kind of functions there, like summing the prices, removing or adding the items to the arrays, because sometimes maybe you will need to add something at the beginning of the array, sometimes at the end of the array, and the possibilities that you can do it here are almost endless. And the first thing I saw in Angular, that the amount of the duplication of those kind of things is very huge. And another thing which is bad is that sometimes you want to change this interface. For example, you want to split the price for the net and value-added tax and other things. And you have to walk through all the usage of those functions in the system and change it there. So it's very hard to understand how the change of the interface will affect your application. When you have everything close together and you follow the coupling that the methods has and you keep them very close, it's almost like changing only one file, which is really nice. So at the bottom, you can see that we can group all those functions together, for example, in product utils, and then use them in your application. But let's go further, and we can add some more complexity to our example now. And on the left, for example, we see some kind of supplier because we need to produce our products, and maybe we can sell them to the shop the same way that we've been selling apples to the customer. And let's see how we can do it. So this is the behavior. When shop buys the apples, shop just pay $10 and gets an apple. I didn't want to introduce more and more complexity, so the supplier will just create the objects for the shop and will not. We don't need to track the supplier's money for this example. And as you see, we can do it this way. So we can add another method to our product class, which is sell to shop, because now we have the different object that we want to sell our products to. So we just create another method. But maybe we have a better solution to that. And I will show this solution here. We can use the abstraction. So for example, in this product class, we see that all those methods here are very similar. They do almost the same thing. They have almost the same shape, but the only difference that they have is an input parameter of different type. So how can we unify that and exchange the two methods to single one? For example, we can introduce this buyer interface, which has the buy product method. And in this, we can implement this interface to our shop and our customer object. And here, you can see on the right that even if they have the same method, the behavior of those methods may be different. So for example, in our shop, we don't care if shop has money. Maybe shop can borrow the money from the bank, so it can have debt. But we want to be sure that our customer can only pay by cash. So if customer does not have enough money to buy the product, we do not let him do it. So as you see, the product class is very simplified. So now you can see the usage of this product class, that instead of having two methods, now we can have one method and use two objects there. And this will be valid. And what we achieved here that can be used in the Angular, you can see how the dependency inversion works with solving the problem of circular dependency. In the first example, first step of this refactoring process, we had the circular dependency between two libraries. Maybe you will decide to split those objects to two libraries. And on the left, you see that our customer class was relay on the product. And our product was relaying on the customer. So we had that circular. But after we introduced this interface buyer, now all the shape, all the contract that has to be fulfilled by other objects is inside this product library, which is really nice because having the code like this gives you the possibility to test it without the real implementation of the buyer interface. You can just easily mock this implementation in your unit tests and check if everything works, and then ask maybe another team to create the customer byproduct implementation and just use it in our application. So we see that this coupling was removed, and now only customer rely on the product. And we have the one-way coupling. And that was the dependency inversion. I didn't want to tell you the real description of this rule because it's so complicated that it was much easier to explain on the examples instead of just reading it from the Wikipedia or something. But how we can decouple the data structure? And this is really important because maybe in your project you want to work in parallel on single story or a task. And for example, one of your colleagues will prepare the contract with the backend. Another one will work with the routing and create the libraries as a base. And another one will work on the UI. And as I've seen in many projects, that there are some people that are very good at UI, and some of them are better on the application level, not the UI level. So the task should be split on those persons, and the one who do the job the best of its own can do his own part. So imagine that in some projects, the get product response is passed to the UI component, and every time we want to change the contract with the backend, we need to update our UI elements, which is really, really painful for our application. And as well, if you want to start your task doing the UI elements, you need to wait until your colleagues will talk with the backend about the contracts. They will create the object for you, and then you can start. And this contract may change. And what if you want to use the storybook and show your components on the storybook? It's not that easy to provide all the response objects. Maybe there will be some differences. Maybe the UI component will not use all the elements from this product response. Should we mock them in the storybook? It's really annoying. So you can decouple those data structure by just mapping the response to the UI interface. So for example, this component, this card UI, can have the interface. Of course, the dependency inversion principle will tell you that the get product response should implement the card UI. But in the Angular, it will not be a good idea because then you will have a coupling between the card UI and the get product response, or on the other way, which is not so good. So I recommend to have a mapping. And as you see in this case, for example, we have two responses. One is for getting the customer service, for example, like extended warranty for the product, and second one gets the just the products. So you can easily combine them by having one list on your front-end application, by mapping the customer service response and the product response to the same interface, which is card UI. And as you see, this card UI doesn't have any dependencies on other objects. So in this example, you see that this card UI can be used almost for everything. And it's really hard to guess how your application will look like. Will this component be used only in one place or in multiple places? So I would recommend to use this separation in your application. Another thing is interface segregation. And I've seen that many times in the front-end application, people use the very big objects. For example, the product can have like 20, 30, 40 properties, which maybe for some applications is good, but maybe sometimes this interface has like half of the nullable properties or optional properties. So maybe it's better to create two interfaces. And as you see in this example, for example, we want to calculate the sell price. And when we pass the whole product, we see the logic of this is pretty similar as the same one on the bottom when you can calculate sell price, but only using separate interface or the partial object. Which only includes the net value and value-added tax. But where you will see the difference is your tests, because wherever you want to test this function, you will actually need the product, the whole product interface, which gives you unnecessary coupling to the product interface, and wherever something is changed in this product, you will need to update your calculate sell price function. And you can see here two examples of the tests. And in the first example on the left, we need to create the whole big object of the product, which has properties like description, SKU, name, which are not needed to calculate the sell price. And the amount of the code duplication in your test will be very huge. And wherever you want to change, for example, remove property like description, we say we don't need description anymore, then you need to change your tests. And that's the bad behavior we don't want, because either you want to refactor your tests or your code. You should not do those things together when you have the good architecture in your system. Only you need to update your tests wherever your behavior of the application changes. But yeah, like removing the property here will not change the behavior of the calculate sell price. So your code should affect only the places where this description is used. So on the right, you see that the test was very much simplified, and it's much easier to test, and we don't have like this overhead dependency on a product. And why we do it? So as I said, to work in parallel on single task or the story. So you can deliver your code faster. You can create smaller pull requests that are easier to understand. You can understand your project better, because maybe you'll have a chat with your colleague that do the same story with you. For example, he's doing the UI part, you are doing the data part, and then you can more easily check your pull requests and know the behavior of the system better. Another thing is to reduce the buzz factor. So we can much more easily switch the tasks. We don't need to make the whole story. The whole story don't need to be made by one person. So the buzz factor, if someone don't know it, is the factor. What will happen if some of your team members will be hit by the bus and he will not come to work tomorrow? So will your project be able to run, or it will stop because the buzz factor was so high that no one can take over the tasks of that person that is not able to work with you anymore. And of course, at the end, we do it to deliver things faster. And that's it. You can check the extended example of this, what I shown you here, with some more details, like added value objects, making sure that all the objects created are created correctly. And you can use this QR code or this URL to check it by yourself. And at the end, I will just show you how to use the repository. This is the NX-based repository, so you can just start an app. It's very simple. Let's wait until it will load. So the app looks like this. It's very easy. You can see the example with the UI part here, but also you can see all the examples I shown you in the exercises library. And here you have all the steps that I was doing to refactor this application. And as I said, this is followed by the tests. And you can run those tests to each step. So for example, we want to run these tests for step 1. Yeah, and we see that everything works. But you can easily switch the import here and run this test for the step 2. Very simple. You can mess around with the code. You can play around with it. Maybe you want to add something like handling the bank account for the shop or adding the coupon codes or things like that to just train your skills in object-oriented programming. And that's it. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Where is Nir?
Where is Nir? Where is he?
We need like 2 minutes. Do you have any questions?
Okay. Do you have any questions?
I have one question.
Okay.
In your opinion, what should be more stable, UI or the business logic? I mean, what should import what? Does domain or business logic should know anything about UI components and UI interfaces, or the opposite?
It depends, because sometimes...
The question?
Yes. So what is more important? Having the constant business logic, right? Or the UI components. And should the business logic be adjusted to the UI components or the opposite, right? So it depends how you work in your project, because sometimes you have like the way of working that is upstream, downstream. So for example, you cannot change the API because the API is from like external provider. You will not you're not even able to ask them to change anything. For example, they deliver their solution to multiple clients. So then you need to adjust your UI, your front-end layer to be able to work with this API. But sometimes, yes, you can tell your backend team to change things. So there is no single rule. I think the UI components should be very flexible, so that we can adjust as many requests as we can to reuse the UI components. And by having this separation between the contracts and the UI interfaces, you're allowed to do that.
instead, like make UI stable as possible, but create
Okay.
kind of adapter with converter inside and convert all data from backend to frontend. Doesn't matter what you get.
Okay, so you mean like very universal. I will just repeat the question.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I will be able to repeat it. So, what I think about having the very universal components that backend can adjust, like in the middleware, in some kind of middleware, like in the adapters.
Backend or frontend, you create some kind of layer between them, like SATA or something like
Yeah.
adapter. And inside this adapter, you can implement some kind of converter to convert data from backend model to frontend model. Don't change like backend or frontend. Just change this converter inside.
Yes. So that I was talking about that, and this converter will be mapper. I thought you're talking about something like backend can change some properties to adjust the look and feel of the UI components. I'm not sure if I get it right. So yeah, I think I would not rely on a backend so much when it comes to adjusting the UI components because the backend should not know about the UI components because then probably the backend endpoints will need to know about every UI element on the front end, which will be very messy because the backend guys will not understand all the UI logic. And the reason that we want to split our code is that we can choose like one team that doing their job in the best way possible, and they don't need to know about other parts of the system. So for example, on the backend, we sometimes use the context, and we map the context just to find the different teams that can handle different logic of the application. For example, like they can have similar models on the backend. For example, we can have sales context, and then they can have the product with some product properties. We can have another context for the stock, which will also represent the product, right? But the properties in the stock context will be much different because, for example, for the product context, SKU will be the primary identifier because they need to know what they sell. The SKU represents the product, the package of this product. So for example, two packages of the same product will have different SKUs. But for example, on the stock, the primary identifier that we'll be interested in is, for example, the place where this product stays, and they will never use the product term for that. They will just tell it, okay, I need to go and take the stock item and bring it to you because you need it. For example, for shipping, that's how they work. They split the context. So here you can also think about this as splitting the context. So we have the backend context, and the backend context should not know anything about the frontend. Of course, sometimes the frontend guys will ask, can you do it in two separate requests, for example? We don't want to wait that long until this data is loaded, right? And they can split it for you.
One more question.
Okay.
Object-oriented or functional? Because you have presented two samples of the same logic,
Yep.
product and consumer. So what approach do you find more usable in Angular and front-end heavy way?
Yeah, it depends for what we use it, because in the functional, it's not that easy to use this abstraction, right? It's much easier to use abstraction in the object-oriented programming, in my opinion. But on the front end, I would say there is not much business logic. It's like presenting the data mostly, unless you have the PWA application and you need to duplicate the logic from the backend on the front end. So then I would recommend to use the pure object-oriented programming, use the contexts of your application and then split those objects to the smaller parts and keep this behavior inside the right objects. We don't want to have situation where one library or one object will grow and grow and grow every time you add something. Yeah. If you have something like this in your application, then you will see it very fast in the NX affected if you use NX, for example, and it shows you the affected libraries, and this can cause that your CI can run like 30, 40 minutes because your CI needs to check all the application, and you need, if you split the libraries to the small parts, you have the right abstraction, you're able to run your CI like in 5 or 6 minutes in your PR, which is really, really nice. And scalable. Any more questions? If no, then thank you. You can reach me, of course, in the hall. So thank you very much.
Okay, guys, so we invite you for a small break to have some chat in the couloirs, and we are joining with Neil Kaufman in a short break. 15-minute break, yeah. So I will introduce you.
Yeah, cool. Go ahead.
Okay, guys, welcome back after break. So Neil Kaufman is with us, and he will do something for you. He still don't know what, but let's try to figure it out ongoing. I just want to remind you that we will have a survey about the quality of our meetup and workshop afterwards. And if you fill up that survey, you have a QR code on your desk there, and you could be so lucky to win our gadgets package. So yeah, I encourage you to take a part of it. And of course, so let's meet Neil Kaufman with a big applause, and let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Everyone got its beer? To House of Angular hosting this wonderful meetup. Very glad to meet all of you. Cheers? No, it's not cheers. How do you say it in Polish? That's zdrowia? Kaczka. That's the only word I know in Polish. I learned it yesterday, kaczka. So I use it everywhere, whether it fits or not. So if you hear me say kaczka, just ignore me. Thank you. So let me quickly introduce myself so you know who is this person that you're gonna spend some time with, because you might want to know what am I doing here and what is my relationship with Angular. And the beauty of this session is that I don't have any slides prepared, because slides is boring. No, come on, why? No, slides is boring. Let's let's look at code. Let's code together. Let's do something fun. I'm gonna put my very simple website, which I built with React. Here you can find a bunch of links, because everything you're gonna see today, if you like to get a reference to the code, if we look at some slides, because I don't know, we're gonna feel like we want to do it. If you just want to keep in touch, I'm available for everyone. So feel free to ask questions, to ask for more resources. Even if you like, we can initiate a Zoom session together. I'm here for you guys. And after this wonderful meetup, there's going to be an after party, I heard, in the House of Angular offices. And generally speaking, if you don't have anything special to do on the weekends, so as a warm-up before NG Poland, we can talk about front-end development, if you like. So this is me. My name is Neil Kaufman. I came especially from Israel, and I insist to be part of this meetup, because one of the things that I really like to do is exactly what's going on right now. So it's much better than anything else. During the day, I'm a front-end tech lead, currently at an Israeli startup called Next Insurance. So the business is fintech, and we're building digital insurance products. A lot of Angular and other technologies like React Native and React for our marketing side, and some Flutter. But I am in a long relationship with Angular. So I started in 2010, I believe, where AngularJS version 1 just emerged. And since then, most of my front-end development career is Angular got a very, very important part in my life. Very exciting, I must say. All right, I think basically that's it. I'm going to ask some questions during this workshop. If you feel like you want to ask something during this session, feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to interrupt me. Please don't forget, this is a wonderful community meetup, so we don't need to be too official. So if you feel like you want, hey, wait a second, why, how, and so, feel free to do it, all right? If you want to jump on the desk and I don't know, and dance or whatever. It happens sometimes. Let's create a new Angular project. How can we create a new Angular project in 2022?
NX.
With?
NX and Narwhal.
you can. Who's familiar with NX workspace? Not too many people, which is good. NX is a wonderful kind of, I don't know if to call it an alternative to Angular. NX will create a very modern, let's put something on the screen, yeah? NX, workspace, great, this is NX, yeah? Great technology, great working environment. It can be used to monorepos. It is a monorepo eventually, but you can mix up different technologies, different workshops, very Angular oriented. Everything good about NX except one thing. Sometimes to get started with NX can be a little bit of overhead. So like if there's the first thing that I would like to share with you from my own experience is like always try to think of, let's start by keeping it simple, because you can always add NX to a project. Actually on my IDE, I just installed a great plugin that suggests me to add NX to my regular Angular project, so you can add NX in any step in your development workflow. But today we're going to start simple, but we're going to start cool. So instead of ngserve, let's use npm. npm init Angular. npm init slowly becoming like the de facto script that can generate literally everything. So if you click npm init Angular namespace, it's actually gonna invoke the ng CLI on its latest version and generate a project for us. Let's call this project Angular Love, because everyone here loves Angular.
Exactly.
Yeah. Where are you? Well, where is it? Oh, I just heard the voice. I thought it was God talking to me, but I wasn't sure. Yeah.
On the floor.
Is there anyone here who doesn't use Angular and it's here just because it's like free pizza and beer? Raise your hand. Oh, you didn't even know there's a pizza.
Oh,
Yeah.
surprise!
That's totally okay. I mean, if you're here for free food, that's fine. I believe that the Angular Love community and House of Angular is pretty much like support hungry developers. So feel free to do it. Would we like to use Angular routing? Don't get too excited.
Come on.
Do we want to add Angular routing? Yeah, let's use it. Why not? We're gonna use CSS, and we're going to wait for it to initialize. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about Angular 14. Who's using Angular 14? Who's already? Cool. Yeah, cool. I mean, you just upgraded, but you started the process of like refactoring your code. I mean, Angular hits a very important milestone, to my opinion. I mean, yeah, it's kind of strange. If you're a newbie to Angular, you might find it a little bit confusing, because now you can create modules, but you don't have to, and you have this functional approach, but we're still using classes. And if you're working with other front-end technologies, you might look how React inspired the Angular core team to make the, let's say, to make the framework a little bit more flexible and to give us the option to use more functions. I think it's great. It will take some time to get used to it. I believe it's great for us. I mean, for people who works with Angular for 2 years or so, it is going to be a little bit hard to teach new people how to use Angular, because now you've got many options to do stuff. Let's jump into some code. Yeah, that's it. So I'm going to open, let's open VS Code and then close it and open a professional IDE. So I've got WebStorm here. Because come on, we're professionals. We don't use Office products to write code. But if you did, that's perfectly fine. I might have some free licenses to WebStorm. So if anyone here really wants to use WebStorm, but he doesn't want to pay, remind me later at the after party, and if I have some free licenses, go ahead and use it. It's for life, I think. At least for 1 year. Where is the project? Where is the project? Angular Love. Found it. I'm gonna open this. Can you see it? Yes. All right. Cool. Let's get it. This. Oh, come on. What am I doing? Let's get this up and running. I don't use the console too much, the built-in console, because again, I like WebStorm. I use it for years, and we do have a great integration with NPM, which I can't find right now, which is embarrassing because I was looking for it and it's not here. Embarrassing.
You have to right click on package.json.
No. Oh, here it is. Aha. Here it is. There is a integration with NPM, so it's much easier for me just to do ng, like npm start from here, and it's gonna do ng serve, which probably gonna fail because I probably got something open on the default port, but if not, all right. Questions for you guys. An Angular project. What's gonna be the first file that you're gonna visit? Shout it out loudly. Package.json? What is the heart, the beating heart of an Angular project? AngularJSON. Come on, AngularJSON. All the interesting stuff going on in AngularJSON. All right. The first thing that I do when I encounter a new project is hitting AngularJSON and schematics, because I use schematics a lot. And in schematics, I can do several things. First of all, component. I like to use inline templates. I like to use inline styles. For this demo, for this session, we won't write any tests, so I'm going to spare creating a spec file. So I'm going to do a skip tests. It's going to be true. And because we're going to skip test and everything is inline, we can keep it flat. So we don't need to create a folder for it. If you would like to start with kind of best practices, you probably want to set change detection to on push. If you're working with Angular 14, when you want to slowly migrate to standalone components, you can set a standalone.
Should we?
That's a good question. We're gonna discuss it during this session. Should we move to? Should everything should be standalone, or it's make more sense to kind of choose what we want it to be standalone? That's a great question. But one of the practices that I believe in is give a different prefix to your components or directive. That's cool. So let's say that my company name is Angular Love. So ALC gonna be for components, and for directives, I'm gonna use a different prefix. It's gonna be Angular Love D. The reason that I'm doing this is that in some point, if you create a lot of components and a lot of directives, and if you're doing some nice stuff like input names, structural directive, micro syntax, and maybe some stuff that we're going to touch today in this session, in some point, you might get some kind of interruption between if you choose just one prefix to fit them all. So for directives, let's skip test to keep this demo light as possible. What else can we do? Well, a bunch of things, but that's probably what I'm going to do. Standalone, and that's it. Any questions regarding this part? Raise your hand. If not, I'm going to move forward. All right? It doesn't have to be like a new Angular project. Yeah, visit the Angular JSON, fine-tune your schematics, and make it work for you. The second practice that I encourage you to do, we work with Angular. We care about performance from day one. So we want to track two things. We want to track our bundle size. We want to track our initial loading performance. And we probably want to track our runtime performance. Make sense? Cool. Who's using any tool to track the bundle size? Raise your hand. I can see dead people. No, I'm kidding. I see like 3 people raising their hand. First practice, my friends. We can't be blind, all right? I mean, we're working with Angular. Tomorrow, open up your project and do 2 things. The first one actually is straightforward. If you haven't done it yet, and let's look at this together. First of all, localhost 200. Go ahead and install the Angular DevTool. If for any reason you're not familiar with an Angular DevTool, get familiar with the Angular DevTool. It's not the most amazing, sophisticated tool out there. To be honest, I spend a lot of my time in the performance tab on the Chrome DevTool, but it's really, really helpful not to see the visualize the componentry, the profiler. Makes my life much easier. We're gonna touch it. So first thing I'm gonna do in any Angular projects, make sure I've got the Angular DevTool extensions installed. So I don't want to be blind. The second thing I'm going to do, I'm going to visit the package.json, which is not this file, it's this file, and I'm going to add a script saying build with stats, ng-build stats JSON. And what that's going to do is the following. Let me run it. npm run build stats. It's going to run a production build of Angular. It's going to be very quick because we don't have literally anything in this project. Always look at the output is priceless. What you see right now is called the initial chunk files. This is the files that have to be fully loaded in order to Angular to run. Without this bundle, which calls the initial bundle, you probably can't run Angular. So this is a very special collection of files. All right, this is the styles, the runtime library, the polyfills, and your main bundle. And you should keep it small, and you should keep it in control. How do you keep it small? Who wants to answer? Who wants to answer? Who wants to answer? What?
Adding only dependencies which you need.
What?
Adding dependencies only which you need. So
Oh.
use the stuff in your project.
I agree with you. I mean, you should be very careful about the dependencies, all right? But you are on a large team, everyone works on this Angular project, and we want to use some automation and some tools that are going to help us. So a very important section on the Angular JSON called budgets. Who's familiar with the budgets? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not enough people, friends. So let's do it quick. What is budgets? Budgets, budge, where is it? Oh, you're right. Angular JSON. Budgets, budge. Here you go. Budgets are the place where you can set what is your bundle size budget, which means initial means all these bundles of scripts, which is crucial for Angular. Most of the time, the polyfills shouldn't change unless you add a polyfill, unless you're still supporting old browser or use like cutting edge syntax. Runtime should not change unless there is a new version of Angular and they decided to add something. Styles, it's a very sensitive file. And if I change this and say, all right, currently, how much bytes do I got? 64. Let's say that I want to keep my initial 200 kilobyte, but let's produce an error, 20 kilobyte. Every time you run build, if it's gonna exceed 20 kilobytes, it's gonna throw an error, which gonna make your build fail and your entire deploy pipeline failed. And it's another small, straightforward, but important tool that can help us keep inside our budget. So as you can see here, bundle initial exceed maximum budget is 20 kilobytes, blah, 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 blah. We got it. Now we are aware of it. In my company, we got this thing set up. And if one of the developers tried to build a project and get a budget error, it just means that you need to look inside and make sure that it didn't accidentally imported something that it shouldn't. Cool? Cool. What else can we do? Any component style, any component that's got style CSS should be in these boundaries. Another best practice. If CSS gets very, very large on a specific component, I want to know about it. Which other options do I got? Any script, all right? A specific bundle, we're gonna see it soon. Initial, we talked about it, all right? All scripts, everything. Budgets is your friends. So speaking about Angular JSON, obviously there's a lot of other things that we can do. I think it was 3 or 2 years ago in NG Poland, I talked a little bit about custom builders under the Architect API, which is cool, which is nice, but to be honest, I'm working with Angular like most of my life, and I had like one use case when I actually had to build a custom builder and using the Angular dev kit, so it's uncommon, but bundles, schematics, go ahead and do it. So we build our project and we pass the stats file, and now I can see it. I think it was because of the bundle. So let's run it again. Let's make sure that the script is okay. Package.json, where are you? Stat.json. If you run ng-build with stat.json, I'm expect to see here on my dist folder. Let's reload it. Reload. A JSON file called stats, which collects information. Now, in order to use it, I'm going to use a tool, a library called Webpack Bundle Analyzer. So I'm going to install it first. npm install Webpack Bundle Analyzer under dev dependencies. And then I'm going to create another script on my package.json that will enable me to run this tool. So it's going to be a Webpack Bundle Analyzer, dist, and then the name of the project, which is Angular Love. And now I can run analyze, and it should look like this. npm run analyze. This is my favorite tool. It's open up on another tab, so I'm just gonna bring it here on port localhost 888. Let's give it a second. And the bundle analyzer, it's your eyes into the bundle. Now this is a very small basic Angular project, so we basically got the main bundle, the polyfills, the runtime. There are no other modules, there is no third party, but I can see what's going on. Now visually, if it's like a huge box, it means that it takes a lot of space, so you get some visual hints, but you can explore how much it weighs after it jigs it, and it gives you insight to your bundle. My recommendation, use this tool. If you don't use it, create scripts, build with stats, be aware of what's going on. You will find a lot of surprises, I can assure you. In one of our products, we discovered that the developer imported a function from a third-party library, but accidentally it didn't use the ES build. So it wasn't like the tree shakeable version of the library. So instead of import one function, he imported the entire date library and he used just one function. So quick fix, bundle analyzer helped us immediately identify it. and we change it to the ES build, and that's it. We just saved hundreds of kilobytes. Any questions?
How do you run it?
How did I run it?
Yeah.
Look, I installed the Webpack bundle analyzer, as you can see here. All right, the name of the package.
You did run start only?
No. So I created another script, yeah? Webpack bundle analyzer, go to dist, Angular love, stats.json, and produce this nice graphics from this JSON. So in order to actually use this tool, you first need to create yourself like build with this flag, generate a stats.json, which is built in Angular. As you can see, it's a flag, one of the flags of ng-build, yeah? It's not something external. And then you can use this tool, and there's another popular library that can read stats.json and produce this. Any other questions, my friends? Because I'm done with like my practices for like the fundamental practices for a new Angular project, or a new Angular project for me. Schematics, because I'm gonna need it, and bundle analyzer, and Angular dev tool. And now I've got all the tools that I know for sure that I can run.
We talked about NX. How would you go with monorepo?
How would I go with
Maybe
monorepo?
Workspaces. Yarn workspaces, maybe, for a monorepo.
So the question is, what do I think about NX workspace?
No, how would you make it a monorepo? What would you use?
Personally, I'm going to use NX.
Okay.
No, but it's just personal preference. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, generally speaking, in this point of time in my career, after working with this intensively with this framework and other frameworks, I were exposed to maybe hundreds of projects. I used to work as an Angular consultant for a few years. I believe that most of the tools, testing frameworks, people ask me what would you use and why. Jasmine or something else? Would you prefer Cypress or Test Cafe? Would you prefer this library or this library? I mean, my opinion is straightforward. I mean, every library got its pros and cons. Stick with one. It doesn't really matter. By the end of the day, you're gonna get the same problems with each one of them. So just choose one, stick with one, and don't do BDD. Who knows what is BDD? BDD. Buzz-driven development. Bullshit-driven development. Buzzword-driven development. Oh, everyone talks about this library, so we probably need it. So let's come up with this keynote and show to our managers and try to convince them that we need it because everyone use it, and then use it, and then we cry at nights.
May I have a question?
No, sorry. No, I'm kidding. No.
Because we talk about the performance.
Yeah.
Do you have any pro tips or tool to check the performance of the unit test? I mean, the fix and improve the performance of unit test.
The performance of unit tests? I'm not familiar with the tool
Because
to know.
sometimes take too much time.
Yeah.
So we have any tools to analyze or improve? Or
So the question is, do I have any tool or recommendation how I can optimize the time and effort that it takes to run unit tests?
or analyze it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not familiar with any tool. I can share from my experience that we suffer from slow unit tests, and recently we started to think about, and I started to think about and actually implement it, extract a lot of the logic, if not all of it, from the UI component, so I don't have to write unit tests for a simple component that just renders something to the screen, so it immediately makes the test run faster. I don't need to mock and compile and detect changes. We're using Cypress and Apply tools, for example, to check if everything looks okay visually, and all of the business logic that was belonging in the component extracted to services. And today we're gonna do like a nice demo, and I show you how you can manipulate view logic, but in a service, and make it much more testable which probably going to help in performance of tests, but I'm not familiar with specific tool to actually know how many times. I mean, the only tools that I know, if you run your tests, you should, first of all, you should sit in front of it and wait. Now, if you find yourself doing this, that's a performance issue.
Okay, nice enough.
If you have an existing project and it is not a monorepo, would you rather add would you rather convert this to monorepo or start a new project as a monorepo and
You ask me if I decided that I need a monorepo, would I prefer to convert it or just create a new one?
yes,
Like-
and copy and paste existing code.
So, up until recently, I was going for like creating a fresh new monorepo and migrate my code, but recently, at least in NX, it's very easy with a simple script to integrate NX into your project. Actually, if you're using WebStorm, that's probably a plugin. I believe there's a plugin for VS Code to do the same thing, but I can show you that if you install the NX plugin, NX console ideas, actually it's installed, all right? So let's try to use it. Let's do an NX. Migrate workspace or add NX to your project. There's like an automated script that does like all the configurations for you. So it's a wonderful plugin. It saves a lot of time and a lot of effort. So these days, if I want to create this, convert this Angular project into a monorepo, I'm probably going to use one of these scripts to do this. I just installed Bootstrap, so we have just a little bit of CSS. I'm on the styles file. I'm going to import Bootstrap CSS here. Bootstrap CSS, and now I believe it's just going to look a little bit nicer. Yeah, cool. So I created this div dot container. Yep. I just want to make sure that Bootstrap is installed and working. It seems like it, although I'm not sure. But it seems like that Angular love sits in the middle, so that's probably, I've got this CSS class, yeah, from Bootstrap. We've got a component. Now we can do one of two things, and I'll let you choose. First, we can start talking a little bit about change detection, which is the main cause for all evil. The only thing that causes more evil than change detection is probably McDonald's. I'm vegan, so that's the reason I think they're the devil. We can talk about change detection and then do some other stuff and moving toward Angular 14 features, or we can start by taking this simple project and convert it to Angular 14 with some routing. So would you like to start with a bunch of useful techniques to make your app run faster and improve change detection, or start with boring configuration that migrate this project to Angular 14? Who's for change detection? Great. I don't care about the rest of them.
No, you didn't force nobody.
No. It was like totally objective. They did it from their own will. I tell you a secret because no one can hear me and I'm not like broadcasted to the world. Even if it was the opposite, I would start with change detection. But let's keep it between us.
So sorry, guys.
Right, no.
That's what you said.
Change detection, the source of all evil. After being involved in endless Angular projects, I can tell you that 90% of the bugs and frustrating that I experience myself and other developers is from from the sources from one reason: automatic change detection. What is the trigger? What trigger change detection in Angular? Who wants to answer? Loudly, please. Change in virtual DOM? No, there is no virtual DOM in Angular.
Events.
Nice try. Events? What do you mean?
Click.
Okay.
Click on the button.
Click on a button, like an event?
Maybe not event. And just click on button.
No, you are in the right direction. Event. Which part of the Angular framework is responsible for this automatic change detection? Zone. Zone is not even Angular. Zone is a standalone library that was created with someone had an idea to create a library that proxy like almost every async event in the browser and then let you run some functionality, and the Angular framework use it. This is one of the best thing in Angular. You just change something and change detection runs. I mean, it doesn't matter if you change something or not, change detection gonna run on any event. The ng zone, the wrapper around zone.js, is gonna find this event and trigger change detection, whatever you do. Let's play a nice game. I call this game Angular Interview Questions. And feel free to answer, yeah? It's not like, don't be afraid to answer. You're not on a job interview and no one can hear us. It's not on YouTube or something. I've been told. All right. Let's say I've got a button. And on this button, I'm gonna click. And I'm gonna implement a wonderful method called loop. And I create this method. And this method is not going to do anything. Now let's give this button, let's make it pretty. btn primary, btn large. I'm just using some built-in CSS classes from Bootstrap. And let's come back here and let's click the button. Now I want to know if this user's button actually trigger change detection, although it doesn't do anything. As you can see. So I'm going to go to the profiler, I'm going to start recording, and I'm going to click it, and change detection is being triggered. Why? Because some async event happened in the browser and zone.js is loaded. And what's happened when change detection runs is going to run through the component tree. And us as Angular developers, a lot of effort we invest of change detection gonna run because it's automatic. Let's fight with it and try to minimize the damage, which is kind of like there is a huge problem. Let's just keep it there and try to improve it, try to do something with it. This is the way I see it. When we tackle performance issues, a lot of performance issues is because of change detection. The way I see it, we've got two goals. First one, don't run change detection if it's not necessary, period. Don't run change detection and try to exclude several components. Don't run change detection at all if it's not needed. And change detection is needed for what? There's only one purpose for change detection. Can you think of it? Update components. But what is the responsibility for a component? Render something to the view. So the only reason that I would like change detection to run is to update the view. Does every async operation in your app is necessarily going to update the view? No. What if I press a button, I make an API call, I wait for the response, I check the response, and then I decide whatever I need to update something on my view? I don't want change detection to run for no reason. So this button trigger change detection. The profiler tool show us that the source is HTML button element, and it runs. Yeah, no question about it. Let's do another thing. Let's first remove the CSS pack and everything that was created here. Let's create a new Angular component. because we want another one. Let's call it child component because it's going to be the child of the only component that we currently got. It started with standalone, which means it's not included in any module, but that's not good enough because we are still working in a module-based application. So now WebStorm tell me, listen, there's no module for it, all right? So it should be included in my app module. So let me just add it here. And I go back to my app component. I'm going to use this component right here. Angular love C, ALC, child component. And I want to log every time change detection runs. I want to see something in the console. So what's going to be the best way to do it? Which method on changes run when? On changes is going to run every time there is a change detection. Let's give it a try. Let's do on changes. Let's implement on changes. There is no input in this component. Let's do log. Let's do child component CD, so we know it runs. Let's do something cool and do print it in red, because then we can see it easily. And now we come back here and console and refresh, and I don't know, I don't see anything, because on changes it's a very specific lifecycle method. If your component has any inputs, if this input's immutable and changed, on change is going to run. Otherwise, it's not going to run. So the best thing is to implement do check. Do check going to run every time change detection runs. It doesn't really care if something changed. So let's implement do check. Like take this console log, put it here, save everything, and now we can see 2 change detection cycles. Why does change detection run twice? Who knows?
Initially and after the change?
No.
It's on a CI dev environment.
It is stable. No. What does it mean? Why change detection run twice right now?
It's dev environment, so we are running twice.
Dev environment, you're right, yeah. It's a feature. Why? Because change detection in Angular traverses the tree in one direction only once. So we check the parent and each one of the children. Now, if we check a component and then the child component change something on the parent, we've got a problem. We missed it. So in development mode, just for safety, change detection run twice to make sure that after this first pass, nothing else has changed. Because if something changed, we're going to get an error value change after it was checked. So we know we've got a bug. That's the reason it runs twice. All right, next. Every time I click, change detection runs, nothing happened. All right. This console log lives on the child component. Yeah? Let's remove the child component from here. Let's give it an ID. You know what? Let's do something better. You see this binding? This thing right here? I suspect that because I'm using event binding on Angular, that causes Angular change detection to run. If I won't use this special syntax, there's no reason that the click gonna trigger change detection. Nothing changed. So let's do something. Let's give it an ID and let's run some vanilla JavaScript. Implements after viewing it, and let's do this. Let's come here and do document get element by ID. I call it btn, and Let's do add event listener, vanilla JavaScript, no Angular. Let's listen to click, and let's don't do anything. What do you want from me? Possibly no. I become possibly no. Pink Floyd, if you're not familiar with the song. All right? So, no click. No Angular. Change detection gonna run? No Angular. Vanilla JavaScript. Who thinks it's gonna run? Not too many people. Runs like a boss. And why it was so important to me to show you this vanilla JavaScript version, it means that every third-party JavaScript library that register event listeners on native DOM elements gonna trigger change detection. So we have a huge problem here, all right? A huge problem. Sometimes you suffer from performance issue, you look at your source code, you can't find anything, but it's still happening, and you don't understand why. And after 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, you find out that this tooltip library that you added has got one line that add event listener on something, on the window, on a button or whatever, and it just keep running change detection and you don't really understand why. Who heard that DOM manipulation in Angular is a very bad practice? Raise your hand. Direct DOM manipulation. So everyone else thinks it's a great idea to use like document and stuff. What happens if I'm going to take this child component, I'm going to give it an ID, let's call it child. I'm going to do document by ID, I'm going to grab this child, and instead of add event listener, I'm going to remove it from the DOM. This button, that's okay, we can go back to click because we understand that nothing really happened. Now, if you look here, it's still there. Why? What have I done wrong? Oh, it's not there. There is no child box. There is no child component. All right? Are you still with me, guys? There's no child component. Just a button. Let's make sure. Let's do an inspect element. Yeah, I can see just the button. I don't see any instance of child component. So I completely removed it. Is that console log will still gonna happen? Who thinks it's still gonna happen? You. Why?
Since the child component was removed later and this console log was added when
you said it might be some kind of like a race condition. It depends of how the code runs. The component was removed after the first console log was doing. You might be right, but it's do check. It means that it will keep running if I run change detection, if it still works.
I assume that there is this console log is added to general do check. I mean, is there do check for one component, or is there general do check for all components visible?
Sorry, I wasn't listening.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm kidding. Listen, I'm going to teach you something right now that literally, I believe, and you're going to tell me if you're right, going to change the way you look at Angular and can open up like a brand new world for you. All right? Is there any whiteboard here? No. So I'm going to have to use some slides. You want to say something before?
Yeah, there's Angular keeps a copy of a DOM tree, and if you remove it from DOM, it still Angular still has it.
Keep a copy, interesting. Yeah, yeah. But it was removed from the DOM completely. It seems like the instance of the component is still intact. It's still there. I don't believe it's even a DOM element. I mean, I believe it's just the object is still alive. This is reference for what?
This is reference of component.
So I remove the reference, that's what you're saying? I remove the reference, but everything is still alive. All right. Look, I'm going to have to use some slide, and I want to show you something which is very, 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 very powerful. I'm trying to do this without any success. Ah, I just lost it. Where are you? Here you are. Come here. No, I've got a technical issue. Just wait a second. It is a technical issue. All right, here you are. Come here. All right. In Angular, when you create a component, basically the Ivy compiler translates your component into another data structure that Angular calls a view. It's a very special data structure. In this data structure, you will find tview. I'm going to show it to you in a second. Tview is how your template is constructed. Angular used this template view to create a logical view. So Angular creates a tree of objects, and all the relationship between the objects, what trigger what, where there is a conditional rendering, all right, will stay intact forever, unless you do something very specific to break it. Then there is the renderer view. What you see in the DOM is not always a mirror of the tree of views that Angular created. It doesn't necessarily look the same. If you've got a P and a div and component that you've got like in a hierarchy, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you're going to look at the DOM. Each one of these components hold a reference to a DOM element. So if I've got a component and I've got a reference to a DOM element, an instance of this view, all right? And with vanilla JavaScript, I just remove the reference, everything else is still alive. I just removed the reference for a DOM element, so we don't see anything on the DOM. The DOM was created, and I just came in and removed something from the DOM. But the Angular view, the tree of objects, which is not a virtual DOM. Virtual DOM, it's a reflection of the DOM with JavaScript objects. In Angular, it's tricky. But it is a tree of JavaScript objects, is still intact. Which means that what you see right now is kind of interesting, because first I believe it's explained why removing with vanilla JavaScript some DOM elements is a bad practice, because you are not correctly destroy the instance of this view object. You just remove the DOM element, all right?
And then we have memory leak.
You do have a huge memory leak because you have zombies. This instance is still alive. It might subscribe to something, all right? Cool? You with me, guys? Let's look at this. Let's have a quick look on this logical view, because it's explained this. Let's do something that I'm sure that you're doing like every time. We're gonna inject view container ref. And then here, I'm going to log it. And let's see what we get. So this is a view container ref. And here you can see I've got a host view and a host node. But what I want you to look, you see the L and the T, the capital L and T, stands for logical and template. So in this strange data structure, this array-like data structures, I've got a bunch of nodes. Few of them are just initialized with null. Few of them hold some information, like the template view, which holds a lot of binding information and stuff. And you find the L view, which holds some logical information about this tree. Like logical means what's the relationship between the nodes. Logical means you've got an ngIf. This one should be hidden and show again. This like logically, that's what needs to happen. Logically, this group of nodes needs to act together as a group. Make sense?
Is this structure specific to Ivy or was it before?
So before Ivy, there was the view container, the view, the first compiler, view engine. Yeah, there was a view engine implementation. In any point of time since the beginning of Angular, our code was translated to some data structure. Ivy is much more sophisticated, so it's an optimized data structure. When you build an Angular app, you basically build a tree of objects. It ends up as a tree of objects that the DOM is created from these instructions. So if you manipulate the DOM, you don't do anything to the tree. So Angular is still alive, memory leaks, zombie components, instances, strange things going on, performance issues because change detection runs on components that does not render anything, and a lot of other great stuff. Is that clear enough? Yes. No.
Why there's no system to, I don't know, sometimes check if those two structures are the same?
It's very complicated to write something like this. It's going to make the framework... Well, you want the honest answer or just bullshit?
Too slow?
No. Honestly, Angular is it's complicated. So if you want to master Angular, you need to invest a lot of time. And then you will always be busy, my friends, because Angular experts are very little people. But seriously, it's really complicated framework. I mean, started to add more and more layers to compare these objects, to try to find if something, did you remove the reference to the DOM element or not? Something changed in the renderer tree, just make it too complicated.
No, there is this system installed about two times checking change detection. So in that mode.
Yeah, but it's got nothing to do with change detection. Change detection runs.
But the system there is. It's
unfortunately.
Additional, so why not additional check for?
Maybe in the future we'll see something that can alert us. Hey, wait a second, there are few components and there is no reference to any DOM element, or DOM element was removed.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yes, please, a question.
When we have, for example, third part library,
yeah.
For example, material, and inside material rendered some component.
Mm-hmm.
For example, match sort. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I remove that?
How can you handle this problem? That's what you ask?
If I use renderer tool, then this is correct?
So the question is, how do I do it correctly? How do I remove stuff from the DOM correctly? So Angular got two classes to handle DOM manipulation, generally speaking. The view container class and the renderer class. The renderer class is a class that contains a lot of methods that let you manipulate properties or even structure. It's not going to help you. If you use the renderer to remove DOM elements, you're going to end up within the same problem. The correct way to work with Angular is first to understand that there is a tree of objects, and then to use the right way to create these view objects, manage them, and remove them. Because any other way that you try to do it with vanilla JavaScript is going to end up with unexpected results. But let's hold a little bit about these questions, because I don't want us to go too far from optimized change detection. All right. So first of all, let's do some practical stuff. How can I handle this set timeout problem? Remember this set interval that I show you that it's trigger change detection? How can I handle this? Wrap it with? Let's explain to everyone. I can inject ngZone, and then I can use utility here which says this ngZone run outside of Angular, and whatever going on here is not going to be catched by Zone.js. So right now this set interval will work, but it's not gonna trigger change detection. Alright, so you see set interval here, but you don't see any change detection response to it. It's possible, it's 100% valid. You should use it to wrap async functions that you might don't want to trigger change detection. But there's another way. And the other way is this. You can use feature that called zone flags. Who heard about it? Raise your hand. Cool. So we're going to learn something new. No one heard about zone flags? That's wonderful. I'm happy. I'm just look angry, but deep inside, I'm a very nice person. No. Don't talk with me. I'm terrible. Let's talk about what is zone flags, how it can help us. First of all, I've got a radical advice for you guys. You're starting a new Angular project from scratch, or your Angular project is still small and you're under control. Go radical. Come here, set ng-zone to nope, no zone.js. Change detection will never run unless you specifically inject change detector ref and call a method called detect changes. Sounds terrible, but a lot of other popular libraries do it, and you are in total control. For example, if we go back to our app component, now I can decide, you remember this snoop? Well, it's not going to trigger change detection now. I click it, nothing happened. Unless I decide that I'm doing something here, that eventually I want to update the view, so I can inject change detector ref, let's call it cdref, and I can call this cdref detect changes, just like set state in React. And you are in full control. You decide when to call detect changes, just a second, when to call detect changes, and nothing is automatically. Yes, please.
What's the difference between this approach and change detect and on push strategy?
That's a good question, but it's completely two different things. The change detection on push is disable automatic change detection on this component unless the input is changed. That's a trigger, and it forces you to go in a very, very good practice which keep everything immutable, use the inputs to pass data for the component, which is amazing and wonderful, and most of the times you set change detection on push and it just, solves you a lot of problem. But in reality, component can change not from inputs. Component can change in any other ways. You can mutate the component state not because you want to, not because it's a good thing to do, because reality strikes. For example, you lazy load a component, you set some inputs. You've got some internal logic that's going to manipulate an internal state. Not every change in the components coming from an input. Most of the time, change detection on push, keep everything immutable, use the async pipe, no issues. Change detection runs when it needs to run, and any other cycle is just being ignored. All right. The only benefits of choosing to do it explicit like this is that it's explicit. So by the end of the day, we write code for humans. I'm reading your project, I want to understand what's going on. So obviously we would like to get some magic. Not everything needs to be exposed. I need things to work for me. When you see this line of code, you know exactly when change detection is triggered and why. Personal preferences. Yes, please.
Will async pipe work if you turn off ng-zone? Because probably when you set ng-zone, no async pipe.
It's a great question, so I want to answer this. Does async pipe gonna work if change detect zone.js set to nope? No, but luckily, a good friend of mine, which is I believe it's like one of the best people out there for Angular performance, Michael Hatsky, is gonna talk on. He's got a talk on ng Poland. NGRX, which is not just for global state management. It's got a wonderful library. NGRX, where are you? Here you go, the push pipe. All right. All right. See this? It's a drop replacement for async pipe. It's like the async pipe. It's subscribed to the observable that you provide, and the last line is mark for check. So if you go zoneless and you are like in a good place, like working with the async pipe, and you replace it with NGRX push, everything gonna still be reactive and everything gonna be updated, but Zone.js set to nope. All right?
What with external libraries?
Sorry. What was the question? External libraries. Wrap it with run outside of Angular. You don't really have any other options to deal with it. Cool. Less techniques that gonna really help you. Actually, it's from the same author. You can use ZoneFlex. ZoneFlex is a feature in Angular that lets you fine-tune Zone.js. That's it. We're done.
No.
We need to go.
No.
It's still early.
Don't worry.
I'm
Continue,
get down
continue.
in
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
2-3 hours and we're done.
Do you need a beer? You need a beer.
I've got enough. Thank you.
You're fine, okay.
Zone flags, friends. You create a file, a separate file. So you call it zone flags.ts. In this zone flags, you can catch the window, all right? And then you can access zone, and you've got a bunch of things that you can do with it. For example, zone disable, let's find it, zone disable timers. Here you go. Set to true. Or like zone disable promises. I don't want it every time that a promise, zone aware promises. Disable zone aware promises. You can fine tune what Zone.js is sensitive to. I don't want it to run on timeless. I don't want that every promise that is resolved gonna trigger change detection. And then you can go to your polyfills file where Zone.js is imported. And actually, if you have ever just read the comments, you would see it's right here. So you don't even need to think too much. But who reads the comments? Come on, it's for amateurs. All right. So here you can import the zone flags before Zone.js is imported, and you can disable some zone-aware features. So if you want to be more specific about which events Zone.js is actually catch and trigger change detection, but you don't want to go like Zone.js nope and start refactor your entire app, you can start doing it like slowly. You can use zone flags, and there's a wonderful library, RX, I forgot the name, but I'm going to share it with you, library from the same author, from Michael, that just expose a bunch of utilities methods to set these zone flags, and it's much more friendly to use than just these statements of window with any set of flags. But that's not enough for us. We want more. So we talked about going nope, change detection. We talked about ng-zone run outside of Angular. But actually there is one setting that can literally automatically and almost for free saves you a lot of unneeded change detection cycles. And it's caused by a very known problem. It's not really a problem, but what's going to happen if you've got, let's say, a dialog that you render, and inside this dialog you've got two buttons like OK and cancel. Maybe it's a form, you've got reset some async events happen in this dialog. And the dialog itself, and you have some event listener register on top of it. For example, you can click and move, mouse overs. In other words, you've got a situation that somewhere in your code, you've got a click and you've got another event listener as its parent. DOM events bubble. The question is, does Angular is smart enough to see that if I click this button, which is inside of another element that's got a click listener, to run change detection only once, like to batch them? What do you think?
You can disable bubbling, if I remember correctly.
How many times change detection gonna run if I'm gonna click this button? 4 times because of other reasons. All right? Cool? Not cool.
Disable propagation.
So one very important setting that I believe that every Angular project can benefit from, come here, go to event coalition, I don't know how to pronounce this word in English, and set it to true. So it means that if you've got like a button or a click event, it's nested in another event, just take all of them and run change detection only once, all right? Let's see if that works. All right? And it's not 4, it's 3, but it's because of other reasons. Yeah. Well, we can find out why, actually, if we want. Let's see if that's fast enough. So we can come here and let's see what's going on. First of all, we've got this. Let's remove it. We've got detect changes on the button. All right? So now, if I click this, all right, it's going to happen only once. Without event coalition. If you've got like, because you can't see all of your structure, accidentally you've got a problem of event bubbling. So instead of event, prevent bubbling, blah, 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 and all of this, prevent defaults, just set this of like, please, please, please be a little bit smarter, and if there's like this bubbling, catch everything but run change detection only once. So by setting this, you're automatically in a much better place. All right?
Why this is not default in...
I waited for this question. Why is it not default? I don't have any answers. I asked these questions myself. I didn't got any good answer. I believe, if you ask me, the default behavior of the DOM is to bubble event. So the default would be, this is behave normally. You want to stop bubbling, you should do it like, all right? So it would be strange because we want it to behave normally unless you want to interfere. Are we good? You want more and that's it.
Question about what were the actual live cases of the performance issues that required such approach to disable zone. So what is the real use case of this
Great question.
Performance?
Like to disable zone completely?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Disable zone completely basically means, first of all, as a developer, I want to gain full control of when change detection runs. Why would I like to do it? Because change detection is triggered by any events. Every promise resolved, every click, every event listener out there, whether I wrote it or from third-party libraries. And we all use a lot of NPM modules, which is perfectly fine. So you are out there in the dark. Every... Excuse me?
It's much easier to debug.
If you disable, obviously, you know exactly what's going on. So it's more like a state of mind that, yeah, you know what, most of the time, most of the Angular apps don't disable zone. So change detection runs, but you do spend time fine-tuning. This should be run outside of Angular. This should be on push. This should be detached from the injector tree. and this one I should disable, and just a lot of effort. Why? Especially when we learn that other popular libraries, you need to be explicit when you want to run changes, and it's not such a big deal. It's not happening automatically. So real use cases I can think of a lot. The most, I give you one because I want to connect it to something real, all right? Let's say that you want to track user events for analytics. Every time that your user doing some stuff, you want to make a post request to your server. Make sense? All right. But every async event triggers change detection. So every time you've got like a fetch or whatever, change detection runs. Why? No reason. HTTP client.post, post. I don't even care about the return. I'm just sending some information. Real world use case scenario. I don't want change detection to run. The first reason that you can wrap it in the service, run outside of Angular. You don't have to do ngzone nope. Yeah. Think about it. Before we do some Angular 14 magic, would you like to implement some cool directive? Who wants to implement some nice directive? Yeah. Because how radical would you like it to take it? I've got like two categories, all right? I've got like a radical example of view containers and renders tree, and I've got a radical example of like DOM manipulation with the renderer that actually, in which category would we choose?
DOM manipulation.
Oh, and there is another category, which is micro syntax. Who's familiar with component micro syntax? Who heard about it? One? Interesting. All right, let's start with something. Let's implement them all. let's do some live coding fun without any purpose. And then we'll see where we are, and if we had enough, we can just go home. All right, first one. Let's do something fun. App component. App component, let's create a text area. Everyone loves text areas. That's it, we need to go home. Everyone loves text areas. What's the problem about text areas? They don't auto-expand. All right? So the first directive that I'm going to show you, I'm going to skip live coding. I'm just going to use some snippets because I want to start to keep it short because I can talk for hours. The first directive that we're going to evaluate together is going to look like this. Auto resize. Let's go through the code and see the beauty of it. First of all, look at the selector. Is this a directive selector? No, it's an element because directives can use any CSS selectors that you like to use. And this one says that any text area whatsoever gonna have this directive. So I don't need to add this directive, all right? I'm gonna take this directive, we're gonna add it to the module so we can use it. So app module, here's the directive. And go through the code, wonderful things, all right? Host binding to style because I want it to affect the style. A host listener because I want to listen to the input. Then a bunch of vanilla DOM manipulation because it's totally fine. It's not going to hurt Angular, just manipulate the DOM. I'm not going to mess with the tree. So I'll compute the height and everything I need and set the new height. And now when I come back to my app component, I don't need to do anything because it's an element selector, and I can start typing down stuff and my text area gonna expand. I'm gonna share this code with you, wonderful code. One great example. Let's do quick two and then we keep it short. What would we choose? Let's do something radical. Another great example, a tooltip component. What is the tooltip component? Working with the renderer, I'm going to create elements from scratch. So every time you hover, you've got your mouse hover over an element, I'm going to use the renderer to create element, to append childs, to create the whole structure of DOM elements, working with the native element. I'm going to set some styles internally inside the component, encapsulate it inside the component. I don't need to use any CSS or any other technology. It's just JavaScript, so I can use variables if I like. Eventually, I'm going to append this tooltip to the element, and it's going to look like this. Let's go to the module, take the tooltip directive, go back to our app component, and give it a try. Tooltip directive, some info, and let's see if the, oh, bunch of problems. Why is it? Actually, he's tried to tell me something, but there's no initializer. Huge problem in Angular. tsconfig, tell me you create a property, you didn't initialize it. But I don't want to initialize it, it's Angular. Great tip for you, tsconfig. Go to compiler options, strict initialize. It's not relevant in Angular. I don't want to initialize all of my properties inside the constructor. I want to initialize it on lifecycle methods and so I don't want it to interrupt me. I'm going to need to restart the TypeScript service to get rid of this problem. So it's going to take some time to disappear. And the other problem that we've got might not exist. Property tooltip directive is not an initializer. Yeah, we still suffer from this. You know what you should do? Yeah, plug it out from the power outlet and reconnect it. Like npm serve. npm. Here's the run. It's still running. Let's restart it and hope for the best. Well, time flies when we start talking on Angular. So I didn't even notice, and we spent a lot of time together. And I can keep like this for hours. Here is our tooltip. But I've got a better suggestion for you, because we have a pre-party, and one of the most important things in this kind of meetup is to hang out together. Two things. First of all, in this kind of session, who learned at least one new thing about Angular? So good. So I'm happy. I'm available for all of you. And I've got a bunch of examples, and I'm addicted to share this knowledge to save a lot of time if I can. So if you want to keep talking about Angular, we can do it in the after party. If you want to keep talking about Angular offline, there is this near.life, simple website, all the ways to connect me. I don't have any privacy over the network. You can literally get my address and zip code if you just Google it. Feel free to ask more questions to get more resources. I'm going to prepare a special repository with all these cool examples of cool directives, and I'm going to share the link so all of you can go through it, and maybe it's inspired you to see what you can see with some directives. And I think we're gonna, we're gonna end it right here, the official session, and start with the networking, and hopefully we'll keep in touch. How many of you coming to the conference? Is there anyone here? No one? 1, 2, 3. That's not. Is there still tickets available? I'm gonna be there for the entire conference. JS Poland, NG Poland. So I believe that's the best conference in Europe, but that's my opinion. I never missed an NG Poland one. Before you go, if you choose to go, I want to show you a slide that got a QR, and you can win some really, really cool swag. I just need to find it. Wait a second. Yes, here it is. Here it is. I will, don't worry. Just have too many screens. All right, cool. Catch this QR. If you had fun, mention it. If there's anything, that you would like to offer, I'm sure that the organizer will love to hear it and get better. And they can win some cool swag, no?
Of course, always cool things.
People, thank you very, very much for spending your free time in a meetup. I'm very happy that I was able to contribute a little bit to your knowledge. And stay here, no?
Of course, we have pizza, we have beer. So.
And kachka.
No,
No, that.
Kachka we don't have.
Oh.
Kachka, no.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, Nir, for a great show, great performance, and I see not so many people left during the show, so I think they like it, or maybe they're waiting for pizza. I don't know.
The door locked.
No, yeah, the doors are locked. Yeah, but so we'll have some small pizza and a beer party right now, and we'll have a lot of discussions as always. So I encourage you to ask questions to Nir and also to guys with the red hoodies. So yeah, that's all. And then fill your survey and wait a moment here. Fill the survey and you can win the swag right now. And because we'll try to make a we'll try to find the winner. And yeah, but those guys that you are online, I'm saying bye to you. And we see each other on the next event. And of course, NG Poland as well. Okay, take care, bye.